Hey everyone, I am here with Greg Gibson, head of the North Carolina Patriot Party, and we're just going to have an impromptu discussion about the Patriot Party and about politics and about local politics. But this is, I think we may have a few new viewers kind of coming from your sort of, people around you. So please like, share, and subscribe. Please like and share this video, and please subscribe to a Deflating Atheism, because we are being shadow banned, and I've basically been shadow banned for the last 2 years. But yes, Greg Gibson, please introduce yourself to us and tell us what's going on with the North Carolina Patriot Party.
Well, Greg Gibson, it's good to be with you. We have got a lot of things going on right now as far as trying to move politics in a more positive direction. We've noticed over the last few years that we call them the mirror party, the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. It's two heads of one snake, two wings of one bird, and they run for the party, not for the people. Mm-hmm. So we've looked at everything from the local level all the way up through state level, all the way through the federal level, at how do we influence and how do we change the direction of the politics in America. And it has to start at home. Everybody has to start at home. We have to do not only follow up with the people that we vote for, but we have to actually give a chance to some of these candidates that are not necessarily A-list candidates, people that are good-hearted, that have a good head on their shoulders, that could lead and could do a good job in politics. But because they're not running as a Republican or a Democrat, we don't give them a second look. Primarily because we've all said it, right? We can't throw away our vote. Why vote for a third party candidate if you're going to throw away your vote? Well, once we started realizing that the mirror party is just one party, regardless of who you vote for, if you vote for Democrat or Republican, you're voting for the same, the mirror party, the same entity. So anybody that you vote for outside of that is a second party candidate, not a third party. So we've started looking at how are we going to not only follow up with these people, but how are we going to look to invest our time, invest our energy in candidates that could make a positive difference and do it for the people, not for the party.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I find the term useful, just to call it the establishment. Just the establishment Republicans, the establishment Democrats, which goes with the neoliberals and the neoconservatives, who have very similar aims. And so when Donald Trump became the presumptive candidate, all the neocons from the Bush era, well, not all of them, but a whole lot of them jumped over to the Hillary Clinton side. So yeah, they're pretty similar. But of course, you and I both agree that there are plenty of good Republicans and maybe one or two good Democrats.
My dad had a really solid principle that he operated under. He loved politics. He would watch CNN or C-SPAN, I'm sorry, when they would just have the camera looking over the House floor and there was nobody there. And he would just watch. He would watch the way that they would interact with each other, the way the assistants would interact with each other. It drove me crazy as a kid. But he had a simple philosophy on politics. He believed that you had to be crooked to get in, mm-hmm. Right? And I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that the establishment does have a way of breaking people. But I believe that there's a lot of candidates, and not necessarily Republicans, not necessarily Democrats, that when they go in to politics, state, local, federal, whatever the level is, they go in with good intentions. And they're told pretty quickly that, hey, if you want to play ball, you've got to play it our way. And it turns into just a mess for that person who I'm sure they have a heart to help the people, but they feel obligated, or they feel it necessary to just become part of the machine rather than stay back and hold true to their own principles. So those are the people that we've got to get behind and support. And we've got to get behind them and give them a voice louder than their own. Yeah.
Well, then you have you need like a fighter, like a guy like Donald Trump. He made his way in New York real estate, and you don't do that by being a pushover.
Right.
So I mean, that kind of qualified him for the job. So yeah, the good intentions are not enough. You also really have to stand up for what you believe in and be a fighter.
I believe that, you know, with Trump, we saw the fighting spirit that he had, right? He stood up when every inch of the media were bullying him, pushing him, you know, calling him names.
His entire family,
his entire family, children included. You know, it was a constant barrage, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 4 years. I don't know if I know I could not, and I don't know of anybody personally that could hold up to that kind of pressure. At the end of the day, though, you know, he was like my guy. I put my guy forward. You know, I put him forward. I voted for him honestly with my, you know, holding my nose in 2016. He was not my first choice. Over 4 years, he proved himself to be that fighter and to fight for the things that were important to not just me, but to my state, to my family, to our nation. He fought for those things tooth and nail, and he fought an uphill battle the entire time. And honestly, I'm afraid that, you know, I stood back in the shadows and I watched him go, just like we all did. We encouraged him. We went to the rallies. We showed up. But at the end of the day, you know, he had his own roar, but rarely did we ever make you know, the roar of the Patriots that loud. I'm afraid we let him down. Not that he let us down,
or it was just too little, too late. But I think even though you have a position now as head of the North Carolina Patriot Party, you are quite new to being active in politics.
Really, I am. You know, I've voted for years. You know, and I try to be, you know,
and be a keyboard warrior and stuff.
Of course, be a keyboard warrior. You know, but I try to. You want to try and make sure that you're voting for somebody that's a decent person. That's, you know, that's got a little bit of morals behind them, and we try to vote for those people. But what happened in the last few months should have pushed most of us far out of the realm of passive politics. You know, I learned over the last only maybe 12 years between Obama and the time that Trump was in, how much politics actually involves or is involved in our daily lives.
Yes.
We don't realize it at the time. I know in my 20s and my 30s, I did not realize it. Part of my 40s as well. But somewhere along the line, you start to realize that these people, the decisions that they make, it does affect us. It affects us in our paychecks. It affects us on our roadways. The decisions that those folks are making directly affect us, and they directly affect our children in the education system, on and on and on. We've got to be more involved. And again, what happened between the election on in November and all the way up to what happened on the 6th with people making a move on the Capitol, that really should have pushed a lot of people. I think it should have polarized people more than Donald Trump ever did. We now know that the establishment will choose for themselves their own candidate.
Yes.
And the only thing that gets their attention is action. It's not keyboard warrioring. It's not you know, it's not standing on a street corner and protesting with 2 or 3 people, even though that's necessary. That's a necessary step. But when we get together, when we bring about the majority of the people that believe like us, think like us, when we all move in one direction, that changes their attitude. That changes their mind. That changes the way that they view us. Somewhere between the masks and the you know, the things that are going on with COVID, they have proven that we're not really going to do much. We're not really going to say much. We're just going to kind of take it. And unless we band together, unless we pull together, they're not going to pay us any attention.
Greg was a little apprehensive because he had never done any live streams before. But you're the most natural guest I've ever had. I got to give you credit for that one. But you see it in every aspect of the establishment. I don't know if you heard about this Zoom call with the 100 CEOs about the Georgia voting laws, and they all had the Zoom call where the CEOs all got together and talked about how they're going to oppose it and how they're going to put pressure on state legislators. So these are our CEOs, and they're companies, obviously there are banking institutions, and there's like Coca-Cola and Levi Jeans and Major League Baseball and all the usual suspects. They think that we need them more than they need us, even in corporate America. So the establishment kind of goes to all corners of the wealthy, moneyed sectors of society.
For a long time, well, you look at Hollywood, right? For a long time, they made movies, and they had their own little world that they operated within. They hung out together. They had events for themselves. They gave themselves awards. But one day, I don't know how long ago it was, but a few years back, they all felt like they needed to address me on politics and religion and various aspects of morality, especially. Like you said, the Fortune 500 companies believe, Facebook believes, Netflix believes, all of these companies believe that we can't live without them. And unfortunately, this is the sad part. A lot of patriots believe that they can't live without them either. They believe that without these companies, without the creature comforts that we all share, how are we going to make it?
Yeah, I'm amazed how many people on our side still use Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
support local business, dude. I mean, yeah.
I know a couple of people that canceled their Prime accounts specifically because of what they were doing with the server systems and things like that. I was really impressed with that. Those were people that were stepping up their game. They were taking their patriotism honestly to a new level, and they were willing to say that 3-day shipping on a toaster oven is not as important as freedom of speech.
Yes,
and that is impressive. That we look at, like, we'll say Facebook. Facebook is a good example of things that I use every day. You use it, I'm sure.
I deleted my account.
Right.
Don't deactivate it, delete it. Yes.
Right. We use this stuff, but at the end of the day, would we really be worse for wear if we did not have it? No. The answer is no. Are you okay with getting a toaster oven in 5 days instead of 3? Yeah, you'll be okay. You're going to be okay. You look back at the revolution, right? Think of the torture that these people endured. Long winters, starvation, and for us to say, well, I'm going to do without particular parts of the internet for a couple of days, that really doesn't compare, right? I mean, it really doesn't. It's not the same as what was asked of our forefathers. Yeah.
And they made those sacrifices when smart people were telling them that their cause was completely hopeless.
Right.
So yeah, they sacrificed everything despite that. Yes.
And you look, I mean, it was 3% of the population. 3% of the population stood up against tyranny. They stood up against the world superpower at the time, and they made a difference. And what they handed down to us was, the Constitution and the amendments that followed. The Bill of Rights and all the other amendments that have solidified American life, for 240 years. Yes, we've made mistakes. Along the way, we have made tremendous mistakes. But was it the Constitution's fault, or was it the fault of men's interpretation of it? It's kind of like the Bible, right? The Bible has been misused over time too. Was it the Bible, or was it the misuse of the Bible? Well, that's what we've got to start, understanding all over. Yeah, the Constitution is the difference between you and I having a conversation like we're having now, and you and I never being allowed to discuss anything regarding, the government itself.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where you have to take a step back and see things and how bad things are when you truly put things in perspective. One of the basic things about our founding fathers is that we have a system where we have a redress of grievances. We can talk about our problems with the system, and we can do it in a civil way. And the most sacred duty in a republic like ours is voting. But we cannot address our grievances about how the vote is conducted without censorship. that should tell you that if something doesn't get fixed very soon, we will totally. You could argue we don't live in a free society now. If it doesn't get fixed soon, we're really not living in a free society.
Well, we look at the concept of just the concept of voting. We do not live in a democracy. We live in a republic. We follow a lot of democratic rules, but we live in a society of law. Well, those laws have recently blatantly been broken. Mm-hmm. We, not only on a federal level, but in a presidential election, we saw states break their own state constitutions in order to facilitate an election because of COVID-19. Now, regardless of our viewpoints on COVID-19, should a state or any entity be able to break, state constitutional law in order to facilitate ease of voting? The answer should be no. The answer should be absolutely no. And what's going on in Georgia right now, as far as making, any kind of a voter ID law, I forget how many states actually have voter ID laws, but most of them have now been proven to not be enforced. Mm-hmm. So what is the purpose of having a law if you're not going to enforce it?
Oh yes, I love Mitch McConnell. Well, we didn't do it this time, but next time we'll do a better job. Next time we're going to.
I have. Where are you? What state are you in?
North Carolina.
You're in North Carolina. Okay.
Yeah, Greensboro.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm in King. I'm in a little dot called King. Actually, I'm in Tobaccoville. I'm not even in the major metropolitan area of King. I'm in a dot beside of King. I find it hard to believe that in today's society, where you and I can now have this conversation via the internet, and we're being broadcast out to however many people we're being broadcast out to, that we can establish a solid voting system. I really feel like in 2021 we were supposed to have flying cars by now, but
yeah, I'm surprised. 100 years after the invention of computers, we still can't have computers that count upwards.
Yeah, isn't that impressive?
Basic task of a computer. I don't know how 100 years after Charles Babbage, we've somehow made a muck of that.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's reprehensible that we don't have systems in place already established, waiting on the next election. And what's funny is this is why at this point we're pushing as fast as we are. Most of the time after an election cycle, everybody's upset for a little while, right? Your guy won, my guy lost. So, you're kind of stoked. I'm kind of ticked for a little while. Then you kind of don't care, and I kind of forget about it. That works every single time. So regardless of what happens in the election cycle, they know that we're going to just let it go. We're just going to kind of move on in a couple of months. Everybody's going to be fine. We're never going to go back and check in on these people. So the problem that we're seeing in the election system right now is they know that all they've got to do is blow it off for a couple more months and everybody will forget. It's almost summertime. Everybody's going to go tubing. Everybody's going to be, going to the beach. And everybody's just going to forget about politics. Well, 2 years from now, 18 months, 19 months from now, we're going to start seeing people run. Well, oh, my goodness, let me back up just a little bit. In just about 6 or 8 months, we're going to start seeing people, putting their name out there for election. Next year, we're going to start seeing people, primary in and run for office. And we're not going to concern ourselves with politics until then. We're not going to worry about it.
I disagree with you, but yeah, continue.
Well, I hope that we don't. I hope that we don't. But that's the general rule of thumb, is everybody just forgets about it until that time. It's going to be the same with the voting system as well. If we don't do something now, that's why we're pushing as hard as we're pushing. We're trying to get our message out as quickly as we can. Stay on this. I keep telling people, a lot of people were really angry after the election. You've got to lose the anger. The anger only hurts you, but keep the wrath. Wrath can be directed. So lose the anger, keep the wrath. The wrath needs to be directed at the right places, the right targets.
Yes.
We've got to make sure that the voting system that gets put in place long before the election happens. And at the same time, we can be looking for solid people, to put into that election cycle.
Mm-hmm. My kind of impression is different from yours in that I think the wounds from the election have not been scabbed over. I think they're still very raw. But people have piped down because I think a lot of people are genuinely scared for the safety of themselves and their families. If you say anything, I mean, we had people on TV talk about drone striking Trump support, craziness. We have Keith Olbermann saying that everyone who supports Trump needs to be removed from society, or Adam Schiff saying that political contributions to Trump could be considered a criminal act. So you have crazy stuff like this, and people they're doing their best just to put a roof over their kids' heads. They don't want to have to deal with that, So I think a lot of people are genuinely scared. I'm a guy who doesn't have a whole lot to lose. So, I mean, even then I'm censoring myself. But yeah, I think the wounds are still very raw, and it's not because people are gonna forget, or even that people will agree to say, well, I lost, but the game was fair, which we did, when Obama was elected. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, we'll do better next time. No, there's none of that feeling this time.
I agree with you 100% on that. And in that, if we back up to the 2020 election, and you come up through what happened on, I think it was the 22nd or the 23rd of December. So you had the election in January. You had what happened in December that most people didn't catch. You had the omnibus spending bill passed, right? So after 4 years, where's the camera at? There, 4 years of doing absolutely, positively nothing. They did nothing. Both houses of the government did nothing. Both of the parties in both houses did nothing for 4 straight years. But then just at the last minute, just before the Christmas break, just before Congress went out, they passed with bipartisan support. It was beautiful. They passed the omnibus spending bill. Well, part of that omnibus spending bill was attached to it was a $40,000 per year pay raise for Congress. Honestly, again, this is the not understanding politics. I thought, well, that seems odd that they managed to just magically do it right at the end of the year. Oh, they must have been running up on no. The 27th Amendment to the Constitution says that Congress cannot raise or lower. I've never heard of them lowering their pay, but they cannot raise or lower their pay on the current term. It has to be for the following term. So most of the people that were voting for themselves a $40,000 per year pay raise. That pay raise that they gave themselves, I can only imagine how many people would have loved to have made $40,000 in 2020. Mm-hmm. People were out of work. Businesses were closed. I mean, it was a terrible year. Well, then you follow that up to the 6th of January, and you had what happened at the Capitol. Now, again, we were talking, as far as putting my name out there. My name is Greg Gibson. I'm in Tobaccoville, North Carolina, and I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I did not go necessarily in support of Trump. Trump lost. Regardless of how he lost, regardless of whether or not the election was fair, rigged, it didn't matter. Trump was no longer president, and they were voting to certify what I consider to be the most corrupt election in all of human history. On top of giving themselves a $40,000 a year pay raise, on top of sending $50 million to Pakistan for gender studies,
a lot of that money came back to them.
Yeah, of course it did.
They've got their hands in the cookie jar for certain. Yeah.
Oh, when I spend money, money goes out. That's the end of the story. When they spend money, money kind of boomerangs.
Yeah.
It boomerangs back around to them. Well, the things that we've watched, the people that were at the Capitol were not all. I mean, we were there, and we supported. We cheered Trump. We cheered during the speech that he gave. But I talked to a lot of people. I talked to as many people as I possibly could in about a 3-hour span, and most of those people were there because they were so terribly upset. Not about Trump, but because their voice had not been heard during the election. Their vote, their ballot was not counted as it should have been. Those people were upset. And I don't think that those people I do agree with you on that. I don't think those people are going to get unupset anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be, those are going to be the people that are standing firm all summer, all fall, all spring, all summer. And then in the fall, they're going to do something. The one concern that I do have is that, we're all waiting on a white knight to come save us. We're all waiting on a super genius in the wings waiting to make his appearance. And this is not about any one man coming to save us. It's about you and I standing together, making our voices heard, forcing our government to build a better election system.
Mm-hmm.
And one that we can, that's not running through Germany and not running through, the Middle East, that it's staying here where we monitor it and have a better monitoring system, process over those elections. Local systems set in place that, again, are law already, but just got pushed over.
Well, yeah, I think in the Geneva Convention, they actually have various stipulations about having election observers. So we did not observe the laws that we would expect of a third world nation. If a third world nation tried to do that, we would put some sort of sanctions on them. But apparently, we're too good for those kinds of laws. Yeah,
right. Well, it's a pandemic. You gotta take into account
because COVID. That's
anything.
Because COVID, it's what, the First, the Second Amendments? No, because COVID. Look, somebody in the comments here. I can't. Yeah. So Matt Johnston says Canada's government lost all pretense and is authoritarian now. Our political class is trying to do the same. Yeah. Canada is way on that track.
Yeah, they are, and I don't. Again, now. I don't want to wax conspiracy.
No, we don't want to be black pill or just doom and gloom. That's not.
Well, no, but at the end of the day, you're hearing, and I don't know if it's true or not, but you're hearing people talking about the Chinese troops in Canada right now.
Yep.
I hope it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is, that's very concerning. If there are, Russian and Chinese forces, military forces on our southern border, then that's a problem, and that's a problem that we theoretically should have a government to take care of. But I don't know if we have that or not. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we do.
Well, that's the problem that's come to our attention that we were never paid attention to. Is I knew China owned a lot of land in Canada's urban areas, like really luxury real estate. I knew they owned that. I had no idea they owned all this American farmland.
Yeah. Well, it was concerning years ago. You look at the fact that a majority of the shipping and the shipping inlets and everything else are Chinese controlled already, have been for years, at least predominantly Chinese, but other countries as well. So our docking systems are all foreign owned. Then you hear that China owns a tremendous amount of farmland here in the United States. And, we've all heard the newest little
the electrical grid.
Well, the electrical grid is a big problem, but Bill Gates, again, now he's the largest farmland owner, single farmland owner in the country. Why? I just don't picture Bill Gates farming that much.
Oh.
But we have a tremendous influence now, an influx of Chinese investors, not just in farmland, but one lady that I was talking to, she spent 20 years in the banking system. She worked in and around the mortgage side of the industry, and she was watching Chinese people, individuals, not companies, but individuals coming in, buying up property, retail property, cash money. They're coming into the country buying up cash money, buying property. So. And we're allowing this. We're allowing,
Yeah, well, what will happen is often they'll have like a shell company that will buy the land, and then that will default, and so the Chinese government will just take over.
Exactly. So when what we're looking at right now is this selling the nation. I mean, how are we doing? I don't understand how we're allowing this to happen. And again, that political class. They're the ones benefiting from it, and I don't know if they're hoping that at the end maybe they somehow get to keep a little part for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we can stand for this any longer. I think we stood for it as long. One of the things that I've said 1,000 times now, and I guess I'll say it 1,000 more, is that how many years have we heard? Someday somebody has to do something. Someday somebody is going to have to stand up. We've heard that for years and years. My dad said it. He's long gone now, but my dad said those things. Well, I'm afraid that history has met us at this intersection, and we are the generation now that has been called on and has this burden laid upon us to do something. Somebody does have to do something, but we have to do it today. We have to stand together right now, because what's going on can't keep going on.
Yes, that's beautifully stated. But I mean, for me personally, I'm sure maybe to a lesser degree with you, I had no clue things were as bad as they are until the past year. So
I agree. I love conspiracy theories. I do, man. I've been listening to them for years. I love listening to, anything JFK. I love all of those.
Yeah.
And you start, we all kind of thought that we had an idea of how it would all crash and burn. The prepper system, or prepper folks and people like me that are somewhere between prepper and not, we thought that we had a handle on how things were going to go. And then this came along, and what happened through 2020 up until even right now,
mm-hmm.
It's nothing like we expected.
Yeah.
It's nothing like anybody expected. So in the last year is when I personally, I've started really having to try and educate myself and actually look at numbers, look at statistics and things like that. One of the numbers that excuse me, you and I had talked about earlier was what kind, how did Trump win North Carolina? And then we elected a Democrat governor, Roy Cooper. To me, one of what I consider probably one of the most hated governors we've ever had. And you look at it, and when I say that, I mean that because of all of the protests that we had from, business owners, bar owners, restaurant owners, those folks that went and went to the governor's mansion and said, let us open our businesses. Let us open up. The capacities that were so small that they couldn't keep their employees. And give me just 1 second. I had to look these numbers up and it really befuddles me. It's really interesting. All right, Trump in North Carolina 2020, he carried 2,758,775 votes, right? Biden carried 2.6 million. Well, so Trump won, but Roy Cooper carried 2.8 million. So Trump carried 2.7 million votes. Cooper carried 2.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
That you mean to tell me that people that didn't ballot down vote? They just they went through and they selected their candidates. They went through and they selected a Republican lieutenant governor. They voted for Trump, but Roy Cooper was their guy.
Yeah.
No. That's the silliness that we're seeing. And those are the things now that it's like they kind of tore their mask off, right? Maybe we used to not see this stuff because it was a little more well hidden, but now the mask is off. They just we see it as clear as day.
And we were talking before we went live. So Trump took North Carolina, but North Carolina is maybe like the second swingiest state next to what used to be Florida. Mm-hmm. Florida cleaned up their voting system. That's what happened. But yeah, so it's just because Trump won in your state, don't be complacent. Right. Because I can guarantee you, North Carolina was as crooked as Georgia or Arizona or Pennsylvania. Well, we were taking ballots until like November 12th, weren't we? Something crazy like that. Yeah.
Yep. Any of these states, again, like we were talking, how are we in 2021 and we can't count ballots, in a day's time? There's no way. There's no possible way, unless you're needing that time to do sneaky stuff.
Well, New York and California could count all their votes in one night.
In their defense, I'm sure they were able to. New York and California, I'm sure, didn't need a whole lot. But, you even look at California, for example, in upper New York, we all know that, those
red counties,
yeah, those, they don't vote. They don't vote the same way as LA County and things like that. If you look across the width of North Carolina, it's the same way. Mm-hmm. You see the 2 or 3 big blue spots, that those carried a tremendous amount of weight because of the concentration of population. Mm-hmm. Well, all of these states that look like that, those folks are the ones that are really the most affected by stuff like this. It's simple for us to look, in the area I'm in, everybody I talk to, we all voted for Trump. But when you go to bigger areas like Greensboro or Raleigh, Durham, obviously, you're going to see a more diverse mix of Republican and Democrat voting. Those are these are the states that really need the most oversight to make sure that, that everybody's voice is being heard. Mm. And that's not going to come from me. It's going to come from laws being passed and laws being followed so that we don't have this happen again.
Yeah. And people getting involved in local politics. I didn't even understand about the role of the poll observers. I'm not qualified to be one, but I'm sure a whole lot of people have been woken up. Yeah.
Well, and these folks were just physically moved. They were physically moved from one spot to another so that they couldn't see what was happening. And they were screaming at the top of their lungs. And those are the places where the Patriots should have been in place to say, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And in the future, that's why we're pushing as fast and as fast as we can to gain this strength and to keep that wrath, to park 1,000 patriots at a polling place.
Yeah.
If foolishness like that tries to happen again, we say no.
Mm-hmm. I did what I think got my channel shadow banned was my interview with Brandon Straka. Did I send you that the Brandon Straka interview?
Yes.
So poor Brandon Straka. I feel really bad for him. He was in Washington D.C. on January 6th. He now has I think 5 federal charges, all complete BS, BS. But he flew down to Georgia. He spent 2 weeks knocking on doors for what's her face? Her name just escaped me.
I know who you're talking about.
Kate Loeffler.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so he spent 2 weeks knocking on doors for her, and he was a poll observer. And then she ended up voting to certify Biden. So yeah, please go to Brandon Straka's. Not you personally, Greg, but to the viewers, go to Brandon Straka's webpage and please contribute to his legal defense, because it's inexcusable. Yeah, and give to Lynn Wood too. I really like Lynn Wood.
Well, you were talking about it a little bit ago, as far as people being concerned about speaking out, because people are being doxxed. Mm-hmm. I do have concerns. I have some concerns. I'm just willing to overlook them. Mm-hmm. We realize now that with the internet, with the power of the federal government behind you, you can really wreak havoc on somebody's life. Mm-hmm. And I know I did not realize at the time at the Capitol on January 6th how big it was. I did not realize how enormous it was. There were a lot of different actors there. There were that I could identify. There were at least 4 different players in that game. You had Antifa and BLM. You had groups that were there to cause harm. You had other people who were there to have their voices heard. Mm-hmm. And we all left that day. And I'd never been to DC before. I loved it. I thought it was, I was mesmerized with the city itself. But on my way out, I'm driving along and the radio's playing, and I realize that they're talking about domestic terrorists, and I'm suddenly realizing they're talking about me, and that was a weird feeling. Mm-hmm. I mean, and when I came back home, I was concerned, for a period of time, what's going to happen, what's going to come from this, what's the fullness of this situation. And I know a lot of people who have jobs where they can't speak out. If they make a big noise and they work for, like we were talking some of those companies earlier, if they're working for these people, they can't say things. They can't speak out. They have to watch what they, post on social media. They have to watch how they talk out in public, because it only takes a second for people to be ridiculed and even, pushed out of their jobs, pushed out of their livelihoods. And I understand the concern that people have, but I do encourage everybody. Yes, you do. Yes, you do have concerns. And you have legitimate concerns. But if you believe in this country, if you believe in the cause of freedom, if you believe that you need to tear away, liberty from those that would take it unto themselves and give it back out to its rightful heirs, we the people, mm-hmm. then you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to stand out, and you're going to have to speak up, and you're going to have to make a difference right where you're at. Yeah. You don't have to travel to DC, but you're going to have to go to these town halls, and you're going to have to ask questions. You're going to have to go to your sheriff's office and ask questions. You're going to have to look at some of these candidates that are not, party line candidates. You're going to have to look at people that think, do they think like you? Are they crazy? If they're not, and they think like you, maybe that's the guy you need to vote for. Maybe you need to put some effort and energy into them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't take anything at face value. I'll take the Georgia Senator Kate Loeffler. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So just because they have an R after their name, well, you would know that better than anyone. But yeah,
Yeah. And and that's the number one thing people got to take away is if we've got a government that's of, for, and by the government, a government of, for, and by the government,
then
we have a problem. It was never intended to be this way.
Yes.
It was always intended to be of, for, and by the people. So we, the people, go in. We, the people, make decisions, the best decisions that we can for our fellow, our communities and our fellow citizens. But when you've got people that are born into politics and that's just the route that they're going to go, then they're going to support the party, not the people. Don't take the concept or don't take for like you said, don't take for granted that just because they've got an R means that they're for you. No, they're standing for themselves.
Yeah, I'm reminded what you were saying before. It reminded me of Thomas Jefferson that says that when the government fears the people, you have freedom. When the people fear the government, you have tyranny. So what do Nancy Pelosi and company do almost immediately is that they put a huge Berlin Wall around Washington, D.C.
Yep.
So yeah, that tells you of their operating mentality.
I believe that violence is not the answer. We don't want violence. Yeah. Nobody wants violence. I personally do not want any kind of violence.
Agreed.
I just want to raise my daughter and move on. I don't want to have any more issues. But that banding together, that standing together, and that shouting as one, that got their attention. That changed their thinking. And that's what we're going to have to do all over this nation. With 74 million of us, like-minded individuals, we can make a big change.
Yes.
And it's going to come, again, like you've said a dozen times, it's going to come at the local level when we start moving these people, these establishment people out and putting, patriots in place. Then they have no other option but to hear us.
Yeah. And at every level, again, woke corporations, they have to know, because it's become apparent they really don't expect you to do anything. They really expect that you're just going to sit there and take it. And I don't think it's really easy. It's so easy to delete your Facebook page. You suddenly have an hour more. You suddenly have an extra hour in your day. That's one thing. So do that, because of course Zuck was making these huge contributions to polling stations. We still don't know exactly what was going on there, but yeah. So let them know at every level. You don't need them; they need you.
I agree completely. And there's more than one way to vote. And we forget this, man. We forget so easily. There's more than one way to vote. Yeah, we're going to vote for a politician at a polling place, but you can vote with your pocketbook a lot quicker and a lot more real time. If Coca-Cola, for example, when they came out with their little to-do recently, telling their employees to be less white, I'm not going to support their company. Yeah, not because I don't like black people, but because I don't like foolishness. Yeah. I'm not going to support foolishness, and I'm going to stand. I'm going to vote with my paycheck, with my pocketbook. I'm not going to support those businesses that stand against people and the belief of freedom. Yeah,
and the absolute poison of critical race theory. I mean, that's another thing that's going to happen is, and I hate to say it because parents are overworked. They have enough things worrying them. They have enough things to worry about. And so they treat the public schools as basically a babysitter. Okay, take care of our kids for 6 hours. But the unfortunate fact is that they're going to have to come together and band together and say, no, you're not going to feed our children this poison. You're not even adequate at teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic. You can't be pushing this poison on them when they're in third grade. So yeah, parents are going to have to take a stand about their schools. And it's another thing. The far left has insinuated themselves into all of the gatekeeper positions, which is like the college departments of education. You have the people who puts the poll watchers into place. They put themselves in these gatekeeper positions, kind of invisibly, so that we wouldn't notice. But when it all locks into place, suddenly they have control of every institution. So for people who are going about their everyday business, we don't see how these things happen. We don't see the far leftists getting into the departments of education and then getting into school supervisors or superintendents or whatnot, and then suddenly they're telling your kid that he has to apologize for his whiteness.
Right. Well, at the collegiate level, it has become let me back up on that. The public education system has now become a closed loop system. Not to take too long on it, but you look at college professors told their students, hey, you need to learn to be a teacher, and you need to teach students that they need to go to college.
Yeah, so they can be a teacher.
Right, so that you can be a teacher. So it became a closed loop system. And it was never. It was always. College at one. Back in the day, was to educate you to go out into the world, make a living. But now it's just a closed loop system. Well, in order to keep it closed loop, they've infiltrated every aspect of people's lives with a socialistic mentality, and the proliferation of socialism has come from colleges. Mm-hmm. That's the first round of propaganda is through colleges. So those university students, those college students go out into the world and they only propagate what they have heard. They parrot what they've heard, which was more socialism. It's one of the number one things that we looked at when let me back up just one second. Every time the patriots go out into the world and want to challenge their government, the government throws something out there, some little fire that everybody should have to go fight. We look at the Democrats are the party of abortion and black rights and everything else, and the Republicans are pro-life and anti-black. So regardless of who comes up, who rears their head to say something, they throw a little fire out there. That little fire goes out, and you and I go out and we try to stomp it out. Mm-hmm. And then they throw something else out, and we try to stomp that out, and we never actually get our point across to the government. We never get it over to the politicians because we're busy fighting some of the silliest battles in the world. Yeah. The silliest little battles, and we can never get to the bigger issues. We can never get to the actual issues that we need to discuss because we're busy fighting amongst ourselves. You and I are the world's worst for it. Conservative-minded people who truly just want to be left alone and don't want to be, pushed out into the public eye or the public sphere. We don't want to be dragged into anything. Herding patriots is like herding cats with a water hose. It's terrible. It's terrible. Well, we go out and we fight these little fights, and we never quite get to those big battles. We've got to learn to let a lot of this stuff go. We've got to learn to drop off and quit infighting. And we've also got to understand that we're going to have people come alongside us that they don't think like us necessarily. They don't dress like us. They don't look like us. They're going to be people who are believers in the nation, but they think differently than us. Their religious views are different. Their skin color is different. There's a lot of differences. We can unite those people, but we can't unite them under the guise of a Republican Party or a Democrat Party. Those parties are already solidified in their own beliefs. So we can move people over and say, look, we can unite under the flag of the patriot, unite under the flag of the nation. We can't unite under the flag of a party.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, something I'm sure you'll take this in context. Like I do these things, and you're a great guest. At the same time, I don't want to necessarily endorse like the Patriot Party at all levels. Sure. But I think it's necessary to have what used to be called like conscience candidates. Mm-hmm. Like Ross Perot would be a good example. He was telling us about the debt when we didn't want to hear it, and we still don't want to hear it. Now it's so much worse, and it's become a national security issue at this point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I mean that's why I do. That's why I have these conversations, is because I think it's useful to have the conversations, not necessarily as an endorsement of the Patriot Party itself.
Well, yeah, we understand that we call it the Patriot Party, but it's not a party necessarily so much as it's a way of life.
Yeah.
We are patriots. We are people that we're willing to give up our parts of ourselves for the greater good of the nation. The patriot, is somebody that's seeing the nation as the gift that we're giving on to our children.
Yes.
That's what we need to understand. And the gift that we're giving to one another, is the freedom to live our lives the way that we choose to live them. And that's what a patriot is. To me, that's what a patriot is. Somebody who's going to stand for the nation and for freedom, and then allow you to go have the freedom that you want.
Yes. Well, you touched on something that kind of touches on the more profound point, is that you're dealing with two different mentalities. Is that you have people who who do everything with the intention of transforming the nation into their own image, and then you have the people who just want to be left alone and provide for their families.
Yep.
So it's a different dynamic. So those people, the people who want to transform the nation, are constantly working at it, whereas the people who want to be left alone, you have to push them and push them and push them. Then they all get together and work as one.
Right.
Otherwise, they just rather live their lives.
Well, you look at most of us. We're out here. We're working jobs.
Yeah.
I'm a machinist. I mean, I work in a machine shop. You have a job. I have a job. My family have jobs. I mean, we go to work every day. If we're going to go to work and buy groceries and work on our vehicles and try to take kids on vacations, we don't have time. We don't have the thousands upon thousands of hours to dedicate to, being everywhere all the time. That's where we've really let it down. Well, many hands make the load lighter, right? So if I don't have thousands of hours to dedicate, but I do have 3. Well, if you've got 3 and everybody else has got 2 or 5 or 10, and we all put those hours together, then those labor hours multiply exponentially.
Yeah.
We've got to understand that yes, we've all got jobs and duties and relationships and things that we've got to deal with on a daily basis, but we're at a point where we can't allow it to continue down the road it's going, because that inheritance, again, that we're trying to leave to our kids is not going to be freedom. It's going to be servitude to the political class. Yeah.
And it can come in any measure of in any form. It's if you hear in casual conversation someone say, "Oh, those Trump supporters are all racists," and you have a bunch of people nodding their heads, you have to be the first to speak up.
Right.
There's someone else in that group who's afraid to say anything. So by your example, you could say, "No, we're not going to tolerate this." Either conversationally or in the national stage.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really resent how discourse and speech has been completely stifled, especially in the past 5 years. And it happens through official channels like, magazines and whatnot, where you're never going to get a dissenting opinion into most national publications, but also in at the workplace, at the water cooler, whatnot. I mean, you have to be the first to break that, because by showing that you're not afraid, other people will realize that they'll get the courage too.
Well, like you said, we at the water coolers where this stuff really comes into play. The fear mongering used to be with war, right? It used to be a case of nuclear war is on the horizon back in the 50s. When I was a child, the Russians were still out to get us, and then now it's China. Well, I'm sorry. Then it was Afghanistan was out to get me. Iran was out to get me. Now China's out to get me. Now Russia's out to get me. There's a fear mongering that's gone on. Well, now they've brought it down to a more manageable level, where they say, they tell white people, look, man, BLM's out to get you, and they tell black people, hey, man, those Trump supporters are out to get you. At the end of the day, the black folks that I know go to work every day.
Yeah, exactly.
The white folks I know go to work every day, and we all work in the same place. There's not a better or lesser person there. We're all Americans going and wanting to be left alone to do our own thing. We've got to quit allowing ourselves to be polarized in these directions, and I'm afraid that's one of the reasons that you hear me complain so much about the Republican Party, because I'm a registered Republican. I can complain about them. I'm not willing to subscribe to that notion that we're supposed to be anti-democrat. That's not what I'm going to stand for. I hope that more Democrats come out and say, well, wait a minute, I'm not against that guy. I'm against particular policies. Well, let's talk about the policies.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those things. And until we start having those conversations, we're never going to get out of the little, putting out the little fires here and there.
Yeah, well, the discussion about policies is so difficult because the left by design doesn't talk about issues. When you express a dissenting opinion, they immediately go after your character and your motivations. Right. Then you get sidelined into a completely irrelevant discussion about character and motivations. So that's what I'm saying is, at the personal level, the exchange of ideas that we need to have is not happening.
I agree, and it's super simple. If we look at we need to also understand that and keep in mind that we're not dealing with Democrats anymore. We're dealing with it's pure communism. Mm-hmm. We're watching in America right now the establishment not of socialism, but of communism. And just to tack onto that, we've heard for years and years and years, oh, what if there's a civil war? What if there's a civil war? We're not dealing with a civil war right now. We're actually dealing with a revolution. And it wasn't started by you and I. The revolution was actually started probably back in the 1950s. Well, if you look at JFK, again, the man was shot because he was trying to put the power of the purse back in the hands of the people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that revolution was begun there with the slow institution of socialism. Now we are watching the full implementation of communism. We're watching it happen. We keep talking about socialism and a civil war. Those two things are long gone. We passed those a long time back. The revolution was already started. We're just late to the fight. Mm. We are so late to this fight that we're not only behind in years, we're behind in millions of dollars in voter rolls and everything under the sun. So we're so far behind coming into this fight. Well, now we're here. We're here. We need to keep in mind that the people that are coming against us right now, they're not dealing with us on a level of rationality. They're not dealing with real numbers. They're coming at us from a point of emotion, right? We don't have. I'm sorry.
Confusion is what they want.
It is ultimately is confusion, and that confusion starts not at the water cooler. It starts at their talking points coming out of mainstream media. Say these things, but be real emotional about it. Well, when they come out and we start talking about this, we never get to that point of discussing the fact that we are in a revolution. We are being overrun by a communist system. And the people that are in power right now are perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I consider them the mirror party, that establishment system, that the mirror party. They're only vying for who gets the most control in a communist system. They're not vying for. There's not a good guy and a bad guy. There's us and there is them. There is the political class and there are the rest of us.
Yes.
And that, when I talked about earlier about uniting people under that patriot flag, that's the flag that we can unite under, is realizing that we all have a place in this nation and in our counties and towns, and we can all unite and make our voices heard to just be left alone. But under this communist regime that's coming into power right now, that we're watching coming into power, that voice is never going to be heard. We're never going to see that happen. Hopefully we will. Hopefully we can establish the conversations with people.
Yeah.
We've got to do it. We've got to do it right now.
Yes. Well, I can guarantee you there are tens of millions of people who are activated, and maybe they don't know what to do now. Maybe they didn't know what to do in November and December and January. But I think we'll be seeing something in the coming months, and I don't want to say 2022. I don't want to pin my hopes on 2022.
Right.
But because like I said, I made the analogy with another guy on my channel. It's like poking at a cat. They'll lay there and they'll tolerate it when you poke at their belly or something. Right. Eventually they're gonna strike you. Yep. They'll let you go for like 3 minutes or so, but then they're gonna strike back. So yeah, we're gonna see this, because speaking for myself, I never made a political contribution. I never written a letter to a senator. I was, again, maybe like you a little bit, the keyboard warrior, the guy who liked being opinionated, but never actually where the rubber met the road. I never actually gave anything that required any sacrifice, really.
Right.
So yeah, I wrote letters to Richard Burr, which were summarily ignored, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I made political contributions above my means, to organizations like Walk Away and Blexit, in addition to, I hate to say it, to the Republican Party. I'm not going to do that anymore, but yeah. Give to individual candidates. Don't go to WinRed. Don't go to winred.com. Give to individual candidates you actually believe in.
Well, we looked at several things. I started talking about this earlier and I got sidetracked. I apologize, but we looked at several things. All of those little fire issues come up, and we never get to the bigger topics. One of the things that we looked at is, what do we actually need to be talking about? Well, one of those things is the children. We've got to look at the education system. And it's not, I'm probably getting ready to get my house burned down for this one. It's not necessarily paying teachers more, but it is making sure that those teachers have the tools and the utensils that they need to teach, and that they have the backing and support of the parents and their own management. We've got to make sure that we're writing and calling and talking to our current politicians, as well as looking at who is waiting in the wings. I really think that we need a 28th Amendment. I think that Ted Cruz is on the right track with a constitutional amendment for term limits. One of the things with Ted Cruz, even if his particular bill was passed right now today, he's not eligible to be kicked out by his own term limits till 2032. So in essence, he would be a career politician just by default, even though we had term limits put in place. So I think we need a system without a grandfather period that makes sure that, people vote the name you know is what we wind up voting for, is vote the name you know. Why did you vote for Richard Burr? Well, I know his name.
Yeah.
So looking at a constitutional amendment, and then at the same time, we need to start looking at forcing our government to quit sending so much money overseas, quit spending, allowing this money to leave the taxpayer's pocket and just go to governments and systems and powers somewhere else. That money needs to be funneled back into the communities, not into Pakistan.
Yeah.
That money needs to come back into the education system, not to Germany or anywhere else, not the WHO, nothing. It needs to stay at home. Of course, we could always, as America, have a benevolence program. So if somebody has a tsunami, we could send them some money. But we've got to quit giving taxpayers hard-earned money, which is a reflection of their labor, out to somebody else for free. And we've also got to make sure that when people come here to work with us as temporary or as lifelong members of our society, that they quit sending their money out of their communities, again, back into their home countries. I think it was 2020, I think it was $34 billion left the United States going back to Mexico from Mexican workers. That's a lot.
We have people from India who come to our best schools, get educated, and then promptly fly back to India where they use their talents there. Yeah. I love the concept that make America first. America first is a great concept. And we need to be able to implement that even further than what we did before. Yeah.
So that communities, families are getting, the benefit of those tax dollars. It's not just going out into the ether to never be heard or seen from again. Those things need to be put in place. I really believe that. And those are things that we can all unite on. We can't unite on a lot of the concepts that come out of CNN, little bullet points.
Yeah.
That when they throw it out, you get upset, I get upset, we argue about it, but at the end of the day, it never made any difference. Mm-hmm. So I really hope that we can move away from those things and start really focusing on what it is that we need our government to do. I'm a firm believer, a good friend of mine, his concept of the federal government is they have two jobs. That's defend four borders and deliver the mail. Well, they failed entirely at both of those jobs. If you give them two jobs, they failed at 100% of everything we've asked them to do.
Yeah.
So we need to move back over to that and start going back. I think we don't need to progress forward so much as we need to move towards a more constitutional rule.
Yeah, well, the federal government should not be used to further anyone's utopian ideal of society. Certainly not when we're not running surpluses.
Right.
We're failing at the most basic elements of maintaining a republic. Yeah, so it's I think we should be teaching kids to realize their gender identity. It's like, what do you think? Or do we just have an infinite amount of money that we could just be using to realize these somehow airy-fairy utopian ideals that we could certainly take issue with? But yes,
apparently we do. Apparently it's just I guess you turn the printing machines on, make all you want, right?
Well, I love how politicians display their virtue with other people's money.
Exactly, and that's there are so many things that, so many bullets that we could put underneath the concept of, protecting our children. The first of our goals is to better the lives of our children.
Yes.
It should be as an individual and as a group. That's the one, the first thing we've looked at. Well, one of the things that we talked about was this notion of, why are they wanting to teach 5-year-olds sexual education? Mm-hmm. I really actually have a problem with anybody that wants to talk about sexual anything with a 5-year-old. I consider that to be aberrant. I don't think it's an acceptable position for the state. Now, at the state level, we're educating our kids. I don't think that children need to be taught by their teacher sexual education. I think that needs to be handled by the parents. Mm-hmm. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are the things that I would like for them to focus on. And like you said earlier, we have failed at that as well.
Yes.
You look at international numbers, and we are as the premier first world country. Our education system is bottom of the one of the bottom rungs in every category. So we've got to start looking at how do we deal with those things?
Yeah. Well, we know how to deal with it. It's school choice,
right?
But
exactly,
and we know who's hurt most with the bad schools is minority communities. There's no mystery about this. It's Democrat policies or establishment Democrat policies that have led to this, that have particularly hurt minority communities. A certain man I could name actually, had policies that greatly benefited those minorities by giving parents a choice in where they wanted to send their kids.
And be it the voucher programs or whatever systems that we put in place, we've got those ideas and those things already ready.
Yes,
but again, you take any kind of inner city. Those kids are the ones that are being hurt the most, and you've got parents who would dearly love to get their kid out of that school system and put them somewhere where they're going to be educated. They want those kids. They want their kid to do better than themselves. They want to change their family tree, and the only way that they could do that is to either move out from where they're at to somewhere else and put their kid in that school system, which is not always doable. Mm-hmm. It's not doable. If you're trying to change your family tree and you're trying to get your kid prepared for college, there's a possibility that you never went to college. So, your paycheck is not big enough to move to a more affluent neighborhood. But if you have the voucher systems where the voucher systems and the magnet schools, where parents have more control, more power to send their kid out and get a better education. My God, man, what kind of changes could we make across the board? Across the board.
I mean, this has been a wonderful discussion. I think we've hit a lot of topics here. So you want to say 90 minutes? I think is a good length for this conversation. I've been extremely pleased. But so remind us again. Well, just make your case for the Patriot Party and tell us if you're North Carolinian, where you can go to support you.
Well, to start with, we're looking for a lot of different areas of help. Number one of the first things we want to do is try and start establishing where to get our news, where to get our political news. And we're asking for people to be citizen reporters and visit town halls, visit new candidates, visit our existing candidates, call them, write to them, and then report back for everyone to see what those, like you said earlier, was it readily disposed of, or was it answered in a timely manner, and how was it answered? We need to ask those questions and then present that for everybody to have a spot to go to. We're actually working on a platform right now for that, where everybody can plug in their information or their report, so that everybody can just pull it up and look.
Awesome.
We are looking at needing people for making a stand as time goes on. We're trying to make connections with people and know where people are, and know how, what are your attributes, what are the things that you bring to the table. The Patriot Party, the Patriots, are our main goal is to, again, make sure that nobody's dealing with anger, but that we're directing our wrath at the right target. We want to make sure that people are having the opportunity to speak out. And sometimes, there's safety in numbers. Maybe they need to be speaking out in a large group.
Mm-hmm.
You can visit us at UPPNC. That's United Patriot Party of North Carolina, UPPNC.com. You can sign up for our email. Sign up for our email drops there. You can visit us at the United Patriot Party. That's one word. On Facebook, I had to do one word. The United Patriot Party of the United States. It's a huge name on Facebook. But you can find us there. And we've got several events coming up. We've got one the 22nd of this month coming up for, what's the name of it? It's in Mount Airy. Oh my goodness, I can't think of the name of the park. Riverside Park in Mount Airy. We've got another town hall coming up in North Wilkesboro on the 24th of next month. And we're going to schedule several more towards Greensboro and on out through Raleigh over the course of the summer.
Great. I want to tell the viewers all the links that he just mentioned will be in the description of this video. So if you want those links, they'll be in the description. But yeah, when you do something around here, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, I'd be just delighted to be a part of whatever events you have going on.
Very cool, man. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you. You've been a wonderful guest. You're just completely a natural at this. I got to give you credit.
Well, it's I applied alcohol liberally beforehand.
Usually has the opposite effect for me, but yeah, you've been a great guest. Again, North Carolina Patriot Party. All the links are in the description, and just everyone, God bless. Have a good night, Greg.
God bless you, man. God bless you guys. God bless American. Listen, if I can add one more thing. I'm the vision of my fathers. I am the strength in the moment. I am the hope of the future. I am the patriot. You are the patriot.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Have a good night, everyone.
God bless you guys.